Hi there, my name is Brian Harrison. I'm a Cloud Solution Architect with Microsoft. Welcome to the Azure 101 series focused on networking. In this video, we're going to be focusing on the brand new service, Azure Firewall, and talk about what it provides within the scope of your virtual network, your virtual networks across multiple subscriptions and multiple resource groups. So with that, let's head on over to the portal. Okay, we're back in the portal, and I've already created an Azure Firewall for us to take a look at. But before we do that, let's take a look at how we actually create one. So if I go under Create a Resource and type in Firewall, it's going to be right here at the top. And there we go, Azure Firewall. Now, as I said, I've already created one. It takes a few minutes, so I went ahead and created one ahead of time. But let's take a look at what all is required. Really, the only tab to focus on is the Basics tab. The tags, the Review, and the Create, they are going to be the same for every single implementation that you do. You're going to be required, of course, to specify a subscription, specify a resource group, give it a name, give it a location. In my case, that was South Central. We then choose a virtual network. Now, one thing to keep in mind with respect to a virtual network, if you are going to use an existing one, then you must have a subnet that has already been created called Azure Firewall Subnet with capital A, F, and S. That is an absolute requirement for every single virtual network that has a firewall associated or that has been put within it. If you are creating a new virtual network, it will do that work for you. But in this particular case, as you can see, there's the subnet name. Now, I'm going to use an existing one. I already have one available to me. Now, I have to specify, of course, the region that that virtual network is in, Azure 101 VNet. The firewall subnet is already associated to an Azure Firewall. And that's because it has already been created. I'm just using this for demonstration purposes. Then, if your firewall needs to be accessible from the internet, in other words, you want public traffic to go through this firewall before hitting any of your infrastructure in your IaaS implementation, then you would absolutely want to either create a new IP address, public IP address, or use an existing one. As I said, in this case, I've already created everything, hence why I'm getting all of the red error messages. For right now, you can only specify a standard public IP address SKU when creating a new one. Now, if you've already created a IP address that is outside the IP address SKU of standard, then you'll be able to use that. Okay, let's go on over into the firewall itself and take a look at what all is there. There is really only one thing to keep in mind for the Azure Firewall, and that's the rules. However, if you saw my video on network security groups, you know that rules are applied there as well. And remember, there are differences between Azure Firewall and network security groups. Those rules can still be applied the same, inbound, outbound, allow, deny, source and targets being the common features of that, and those are an available rule set that's available for Azure Firewall. However, there are additional capabilities. So for example, let's go ahead and click on the rules. In rules, you'll see here at the top under my tabs, I've actually got 3 different rule collections, whereas network security groups only have 1. The rule collections in Azure Firewall are NAT, network, and application. Now, network is going to be pretty much the same as what you would see within the scope of a network security group. We click on a new rule collection here, you're going to give it a name, you're going to give it a priority, you're going to specify allow or deny, and then you're going to create rules with names, protocols, source and destination addresses, as well as ports. Now, one big difference you can see right here under protocols, you actually have the ability to use ICMP and any in addition to the TCP and UDP that are available in network security groups. But these are going to be the same types of rules that you would have set up inside of your network security groups, but now you're applying them at the entire virtual network or multiple virtual networks within the scope of your subscription and subscriptions. This is a more global service. If we then go over to the application rule collection and take a look at what the requirements are here, in here, very similar, still name, priority, allow or deny, and then rules with source addresses and protocol port combinations. But now the targets are going to be fully qualified domain names rather than just IP addresses. The reasoning for this is so that you can actually allow for traffic to hit PaaS services within the scope of Azure. So if you've ever deployed an Azure SQL instance or an Azure storage account, by default they come with publicly available endpoints. You may want to limit the traffic in addition to the capabilities of those services and how they limit traffic. Maybe you want to even prevent traffic from ever hitting the endpoint and not just allowing the service to control what comes in and out. You can actually now do it at a firewall level. Then the last area is your NAT rule collection. And this one is absolutely different from your network security group because, first of all, name priority, but now you actually have the ability to specify an action, which is a destination network address. So this is where you can say, hey, I want something that's coming in requesting this IP to actually end up at this IP, or that's coming in and hitting this IP port. I want to translate it over to this IP port. So this allows you to make this isn't routing changes like you're getting out of user-defined routing. You're actually now saying that I want to hide my private IP addresses or my public IP addresses from ever being found out. This allows me to do that. And with that, we're all done with Azure Firewall. That is all of the functionality that's available. This covers your standard firewall-based capabilities in a stateful way versus a stateless way, that is the network security groups. But in addition, you also get whitelisting features. You also get firewall rules for application services, not just IP addresses, and things of that nature. So hopefully this gives you a good understanding of how you might want to implement this within the scope of your Azure implementation. I'll see you next time.